We're ready to start cutting out our bag, and the first thing that we can do is to just cut. We're actually going to be cutting right along the drawn line. Try not to cut it off, try to cut right next to it. Remember, when you're holding these kind of shears to cut fabric, you need to put your thumb in the single hole, and then I usually put my last 3 fingers in the bigger hole, and my pointer is on the outside, and that helps me guide the scissors as I go. If I'm doing it left-handed, same thing happens. Last 3 fingers in that hole, pointer finger on the outside, and the thumb goes in the thumb hole. And I do have left-handed scissors if you need them. So you also want to keep your fabric flat while you're cutting. And if you're right-handed, you really should cut counterclockwise, and that is so that you can see the line as you are cutting it. If I try to cut over here, then the blade is between me and the line, and I can't really see the line very well. So if I cut counterclockwise, then it is a whole lot easier for me to see where I'm going. I'm going to just cut all the way to the end just to make it a little bit easier to handle this piece. And I'm going to set this one out for a while. There's nothing unusual or fancy about these things. They're basically just rectangles. The main thing that you do want to remember is you don't cut down here where the fold is. That this is going to end up being one long piece. So I'm going to finish cutting this first one, and then I'm going to let you cut things on your own. So I'm cutting in between the two, but I am cutting on the line because I don't want to just split the difference between the two lines, because then my pieces aren't going to be the right size or shape. Okay. So all the way to the end, and be careful you keep them nice and square. And I should have 2 like this. I'm going to finish cutting this, and then I'm going to cut the big piece out. Again, you want to cut along your drawn lines all the way around, and then we're ready to do the marking. You have one more thing that you have to mark and cut before your bag is ready to sew. And before you do this marking, you do need to have your little 3 by 3 inch square that we're going to use to mark our corners. You also have to decide what the top of your bag is going to be. So I have this kind of just wild fabric. There's no real top or bottom, but I've decided that these round reddish shapes and these blue ones, I want the things to go that way. And I want this rounded part to be at the top. So this is actually going to be the top of my bag. And I'm going to use this little pattern to mark the corners that I'm going to cut out before we start putting the bag together. So I'm going to lay this down on the corner, and I want to make sure I'm right on the corner. I have it lined up here and I have it lined up there. And then I'm going to take my pencil, I'm going to make a mark, okay, around that corner. If you need to use a straight edge to straighten out the line, that's fine. You need to do that on the opposite corner as well, so you have both of them marked. So I just hold my hand on it so that it doesn't wiggle around, and then I draw around the edge of the template. Okay, and again, I'm using a pencil. I just need to have a couple of pins to hold this together here. I don't need a lot. I'm just going to have 2. And I'm actually putting them on the big part, not on this little part that I'm going to cut out, because I want these edges to stay still. Doesn't matter if these wiggle around very much. So I'm going to pin both of them. And again, I want the pins not anywhere near where the drawn line is. Now I'm going to take my scissors, and I want to very carefully cut on that line, but don't go past where the 2 corners meet, or where the corner meets. So very carefully, I'm cutting through both layers of fabric just to that corner, and it should pop out. to that corner, and then, you know, move your fabric around if you need to make sure that you can cut accurately. And these two little squares, I'm going to hang on to them because I know I always have to have fabric to check my threading to make sure that I have it threaded correctly. So I'm going to just put these in my plastic bag so I can use them for later. Now we're ready to do our marking.